Welcome back, guys, to the 305K. I'm Jackson Lang alongside my co-host Tucker Hobart. We're here to debrief the Baku Grand Prix and what was a very chaotic race weekend and arguably the greatest qualifying we've ever seen. I mean, I was looking at a stat and I saw that qualifying this year was longer than the race last year. And
Yeah.
it's just a testament to how chaotic and entertaining it was.
Yeah, and qualifying on Saturday, I agree. Maybe the best qualifying we've ever seen. The most red flags in the qualifying session in history. Kind of dampened by the fact that one of them was a Ferrari and Lewis went out in Q2, but still just nonstop action. We had at least, I think, six drivers who hadn't put in a lap time when there was like 3 minutes to go. I mean, it was down to the wire, total excitement. We got a really fun order that happened. My only gripe is that after lap two of the race on Sunday, I thought it was a pretty mundane race overall. There's a little bit of switching around, but nothing too
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, it didn't it wasn't that entertaining. That being said, having a
Hmm.
championship leader out of the race on lap one definitely provided to watch to see if Lando could climb up the order, which we'll get into it later, but he really just
Hmm.
didn't. And it was disappointing to me because I really did want him to finish well, not only for my prediction, but also because I want as good a championship battle as possible. And,
Yeah.
he just didn't really climb. And I don't know if it was the pace in the car, which didn't really seem great all weekend. Not that, again, we always say it is a McLaren, so it's going to be fast no matter what. But
Hmm.
it really didn't stack up to even the Red Bull. I mean, that car was quick this weekend. Like, I kind of predicted. I thought, and I mean, the second sector is obviously a very twisty, turny, and technical or sector, but
Yeah.
like the other two are very straight with a lot of similarities to Monza,
Hmm.
which obviously Max won. So I wasn't exactly surprised by the Red Bull's pace, but I was taken aback to see the sheer level of dominance produced by Max.
Yeah. I think that for me, I agree, Max. His dominance is really interesting and he completely blew everyone away. I think he did have a little bit of bumper between him and the two McLarens, one of which went out lap one, obviously. But even the Mercedes, Russell 14 seconds behind in the end, but he was stuck behind a decent amount of cars between Verstappen and himself. I think that the more impressive one to me was Yuki Tsunoda, who we haven't seen all that much of this year, but he was in the second Red Bull and put on a pretty good show, finishing, I think, in front of Lando Norris in the end. He had a very strong race, in my opinion. P6, I think that's his highest finish of the year. The pace of that Red Bull was up, and I also think that the Mercedes looked really nice too. Those two cars kind of took the front seat in place of the two McLaren, the McLaren and Ferrari. And it does worry me a little bit going down the stretch how that bodes for Ferrari.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was definitely an impressive weekend by Mercedes finishing 2 and 4. And I was impressed by Yuki. And, I mean, I called him as my big flop, which was looking back a
Not your
horrible pick.
best.
And I
Although at
mean,
least at least you scored points this week, I think your
I,
predictions.
I did score points. It was just, for both of us, it really wasn't a great weekend in any
No.
aspect of predictions. That being
Well,
said, next
your
week,
bold prediction was a little bit scary because of how spot on it was.
yeah, we were talking before we started recording, and it was surprising to both of us. I kind of
Hmm.
told Tucker, like, I threw up just a prayer whenever I predicted it, and you know,
I
it
might have put an
just
investigation against you after that one. It's a little bit
yeah, I
fishy.
know. I might have snuck a trip to Baku and then played with Oscar's car on Saturday night to make an anti-stall at the line. But
Yeah.
I wanted to see something entertaining, and man, I was shocked when I saw him
Hmm.
off the line and
Yeah.
crashing on the lap one. I mean, it was just very surprising. But I have a feeling that predictions next week are going to be a lot of fun because we are going to have some
Yeah.
special guests coming on to join us. So.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. I do want to talk about the championship battle because it's the big story every week. We've talked about it every week. Another update though, and I do look to Oscar Piastri because I remember Crofty saying on the broadcast that this was the first real mistake he's made since Australia in lap one. And he's been so consistent this year. And I've said in the past, the only way I see him not winning the championship is if he starts to pile up DNS, if he starts to struggle. Could this be a crack in the armor that Piastri's built up over these last few races?
I really don't. I think it was just a testament to the weekend McLaren had, I was mentioning earlier, but they just weren't that fast in practice. Obviously, Oscar has
Hmm.
an anti-stall off the line, goes to P20, and the conditions just weren't great outside either. So I think all of those kind of combining together just made it so Oscar crashed and just his weekend just was kind of,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was. I
we
mean, it was
didn't,
disappointing. Saturday, he also went into the wall. Um, all of the race on Sunday was just questionable. You mentioned it. He jump started by a long shot and then had to account for that, which is why he was at the back and then try to risky move around the outside and put in the wall. I think he can chart this off as just a bad weekend. And I keep my trust in him. I've been on the Piastri hype train all year. I've kind of supported him above Norris. I think that what comforts me about this is the fact that he's shown the ability to bounce back. We talk about Australia, where he went onto the grass, his home race, was last on the road for a little bit, and then came back and made an unbelievable move around Lewis Hamilton, and then followed that up with 3 or 4 great races that put him in the driver's seat for the championship at a time when we were kind of looking towards Lando Norris and thinking that he was the uh, favorite. So I think he has the advantage of points. He has the advantage of time, and it's still Oscar Piastri's championship to lose.
yeah, I agree. And he's still up a big margin. I mean, Lando got 6 points back, finishing P7. And, it just, for that race, Tucker's laughing. For that scenario to happen, Lando just needed a better finish. He needed it, and he didn't get it. He finished the equivalent of what he would have gained if Oscar finished P2 and Lando would have won the race. I mean, he just really didn't get much in a race that he had a big chance to take a chunk out of the championship and really make it interesting.
Yeah, this was Norris's big chance, and I am a champion Lando Norris hater, and I think it showed once again he has all of the chance to break down this lead. We know that the reason why the lead was so big is because Piastri won a race when Norris's engine went out, and that's the big swing that we had a couple weeks ago. That was in the Netherlands. Now Piastri does not the same thing, but he does go out of the race early. Norris has all this chance to regain it. We've seen him do it last year. He went from 17th to 5th in Baku. This year, he goes from, I want to say, 7th to 7th. I mean, it was like completely uninspiring. It was not a great drive. Um, it didn't help that he had a long pit stop. He got held long and then he came out behind Sonoda, Lawson, and Leclerc, and then kind of had to work his way through. He only picked off Leclerc, I think. I just don't see it from Lando. And you mentioned when we recapped in Monza, I believe, that you felt like Lando Norris was more likely to put in a spectacular drive, but you thought that Piastri was more consistent. I don't think Norris has it in him right now. I just think he's a little bit impatient. He's a little bit too, he just it seems to be struggling. And I don't think that he has the guts to pull his championship back within reach. I honestly think that I'm looking more across down the pits to Verstappen as maybe that second competitor in the championship.
I saw a stat saying that if Max won every single race and Lando won two of the remaining, and Oscar finished first or second or third in the remaining
Mm-hmm.
races, that Max would win the championship by 1 point. And
That's a pretty big
while,
ask.
oh my gosh, it's near impossible. But for some reason, like, you can't count him out because it's Max.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's really come off the summer break just swinging, and he has been
Yeah.
driving very well. So while I don't think it'll happen, I'm very interested to keep an eye on it and see how close he gets in the end, because I do think he's going to take some of these races near the end. And the question is, can Max take some races and Lando like kind of climb on his back and potentially push Oscar down into P3 some races, Max maybe finishing in a P2, and all of a sudden you have a 10-point gap instead of that 7-point gap, where if you have a couple of those races, it really will tally up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, we're talking about Lando Norris and how he hasn't had the consistency necessarily to finish this championship. So who knows if that'll be true. But I think it's an interesting that you bring it up, because Max definitely can compete for this championship in an interesting way. But
Yeah. Oh, go on.
I was just gonna say, I feel like unless you have a really quick point, I think the most impressive aspect of the weekend that we haven't talked about, and I'll put it in his words, is Sainz's first smooth operation in Williams.
Yeah, you almost said Ferrari. It's still kind
I
of
did almost say
it feels
Ferrari.
wrong. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that I kind of rag on him a little bit too because I'm not a huge fan of his, but it was a great drive from Carlos Sainz. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He really just went out there and put it all on for show. We talked about that chaotic qualifying, and it really served him. He was one of three to put in a lap early in Q3, which set him up for a pretty big advantage going down the stretch because everyone else was kind of trying to hook it up, but at the same time making sure that they at the very least had a time on the board. Whereas Sainz had the comfort of having one on, so he could just go out and do the best that he could, and ended up, I believe, on the front row, which is
yeah.
unbelievable. And we kind of
Hmm.
talk about Williams a lot. You are a very optimistic
Yeah.
Williams supporter, I think, not necessarily fan, but supporter.
Yeah.
And it seems like a good sign of things to come. They've been really great this year, and a lot of that has been down to Albon. But Carlos Sainz has just put in the best drive of their season.
Yeah, and the thing that really impressed me about his first lap in Q3 is that it wasn't like he had just a lap that beat everyone else. He had a lap that was 4/10 off the best lap of the day, which was
Hmm.
Verstappen's in Q2. And he really set himself up. So Max had to put in a stellar lap at the end to take pole from him. And I just think like people are disregarding that first lap in Q3 like a lot is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Because it was a seriously good lap, whether rain
yeah,
or not.
yeah. Well, not to mention he put in that lap, which was just about contending for pole, and then he went on a stonker after that and went even faster and put on the front row, which is pretty unbelievable to have two laps like that from a team that we don't really see at the top quite as much. You know, Q3 has kind of become a more regular occurrence for them, but even so, it's a great weekend for him. He kind of showed out above Albon, who really struggled. He was the first red flag in qualifying, had an incident during the race. It really flipped the script from what we've seen a lot of the season in the Williams garage, where we're looking towards Carlos Sainz now to see if he can take the lead as a driver in that team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another impressive finish from this weekend that we haven't talked about is Liam Lawson had his career best finish in P5. And he
Hmm.
also had a great qualifying that led it to him to a great race result. And Racing Bulls had a double points with Hadjar finishing P10.
Yeah, not to mention that's a little bit of a personal one too. He was replaced at Red Bull in the second seat by Yuki Tsunoda just at the start of the season. He wasn't even given really that much of a chance to prove himself, and finishing above Yuki Tsunoda, finishing above Lando Norris has to feel good if you're Liam Lawson. I think that he's got a lot of aspirations even after that Red Bull seat. So getting a P5 here in Baku is a really big result for him.
Yeah, for sure. And we've been saying it all year, but I really do feel like that Racing Bull is like almost quicker than that second Red Bull. And Yuki drove very well, and yet he was only in
Hmm.
P6 when his teammate won the race. So I just think, it's definitely an interesting like situation down there. And
Hmm.
like the fact that Hadjar might get that Red Bull seat because there's been rumors of that.
Oh, I hope
And
not.
I mean,
Well, we'll
he
see.
like there's a clip of him, and I think
He
we've mentioned
deserves
this.
to get
Oh, he
he deserves
absolutely
to get
deserves it. But like he was joking around saying, I don't want that seat. But like I genuinely think he believes in his heart that he does not want that seat because that car is just so difficult to
Mhm.
drive.
Maybe he'll come to Ferrari in 2027.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, that I really wonder if Sainz is eyeing that seat back whenever Lewis potentially retires.
He might, and I think that he needs a few more drives like that one to prove himself. But I wouldn't put it out of reach. I'll say that. They
Yeah,
say,
absolutely.
you know, it's a hard way back to the top for him, but I don't think it's impossible, and I could see it
Yeah,
happening.
I agree. I definitely could see it happening. It was just a pretty chaotic weekend overall. It was just a lot of
Hmm.
shockers left and right. You have Sainz finishing on the podium, almost taking pole. You have Hadjar P5, and then obviously you have Oscar crashing out in the first lap of the race. It was just like chaos everywhere, and it was fun to watch. I loved watching it. I had an absolute blast watching it. It was honestly the most fun I've had watching qualifying in a long
Oh
time, if
yeah,
not
for sure.
ever. And the race, like even though it wasn't the most entertaining, it was still fun to watch because it felt like something you hadn't seen all year. So
Yeah,
Um,
it was new trends, Red Bull up, Mercedes up, Ferrari down, who I held back from talking about because I don't want to be too monotonous and talk about them every episode. But
yeah.
McLaren struggling, Alpine terrible, RB doing well, and then everyone else kind of milling around in the middle. I think it just bodes well for the rest of the year. I think the field is starting to almost come back a little bit. We're starting to see a little bit high competition. I think everyone's starting to recognize that, and I think we're going to get some fireworks down the stretch.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm excited for the finish. I know you
Hmm.
are. And
Yeah.
we got an awesome track coming up next week in
Yeah, speaking of
Singapore.
fireworks, yeah, night race in Singapore,
Yeah,
which, always exciting. Not my favorite track, but super fun place, super fun race, super fun sights to see. And we'll have good predictions coming up. Stick around. It's going to be really fun to watch. We have some guests coming on. So we'll see you then.